Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world where even your shadow is judged, where a misplaced bow can be seen as an insult, and your birthright isn't just a detail, it's a life sentence. You wake up in feudal Japan. The light through rice paper windows is soft, but don't be fooled. It hides a society so strict even your breakfast behavior could earn you public scorn. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing how far our sleepy little history crew stretches. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not just born, you're sorted, not by choice, but by a centuries-old caste system so airtight, not even a miracle could push you into another tier. Are you samurai, peasant, artisan, or merchant? You'll know by your father's status, and if that sounds unfair, just wait until you learn what happens if you try to marry outside your class. Spoiler, it's less Romeo and Juliet and more immediate exile with a side of dishonor. You wake into a household defined by reverence. Every object has its place, every action a prescribed meaning. Even washing your hands isn't just hygiene, it's spiritual purification. You bow when you greet your elders, bow before meals, bow after meals, and bow to the idea of bowing itself. And no, slouching is not an option unless you want to be labeled uncultured, or worse, rude. The floors creak, not from age, but from centuries of ritual footwork. Your sandals come off at the threshold. You're taught the direction they face matters. Point them the wrong way, and you're not just sloppy, you're disturbing the home's energy. Feng shui? Try feudal ferocity. Historians still argue whether these customs were universally enforced or varied between regions, but make no mistake, deviation wasn't cute, it was suspicious. You head outside and find the city beautiful. Narrow alleyways hum with life. Cherry blossoms drift in the breeze like pink confetti. But behind every petal lies control. You hear a vendor address a customer. His tone is deferential, his words rehearsed. Because speech has rules here too. Men speak with modest strength, women with soft humility. Children speak only when prompted. You accidentally use an informal greeting with a local elder, and boom, awkward silence, so loud it could cut paper. Did we mention fashion? That gorgeous kimono isn't just for style, it's a map of your identity. From sleeve length to crest placement, it silently screams your class, marital status, and seasonal appropriateness. Wearing one that's out of season? You may as well tattoo "foreigner" on your forehead. Even your walking pace matters. Too fast and you're hasty. Too slow and you lack discipline. It's like a social obstacle course wrapped in silk. Food? You're served rice in lacquered bowls, each placed with obsessive symmetry. Chopsticks must never be left sticking upright. They resemble funeral incense. Do it once, and aunties will gasp. Do it twice, and monks might stage an intervention. One quirky tidbit, people in rural areas sometimes believed bad chopstick etiquette could summon spirits. Yep, summon. All that from misaligned tableware. Everything around you whispers, comply. You don't laugh too loudly, don't chew with visible motion, don't speak with bluntness, and never, ever contradict someone above you, even if they're wrong, which there often are. But hey, obedience is art here. What makes this stiflingly poetic is how clean everything looks. Immaculately kept homes, polished floors, trimmed gardens. You spot a neighbor sweeping not dust, but imagined dust, because the act itself is holy. Cleanliness was more than virtue, it was devotion, a mark of moral purity. Some communities bathed multiple times a day, even in winter. You think your skincare routine is intense? Try freezing temple baths followed by mandatory incense fumigation. You realize that individuality isn't just frowned upon, it's a liability. There's a term for those who stand out, the henjin, the eccentric. And being one? Social death. Families disown, neighbors avoid, and teachers lecture behind your back with theatrical sighs. In all this, there's beauty, no denying. The architecture, the gardens, the poetry. You hear children recite haiku with haunting precision. You spot a painted screen that could make modern art blush. But don't get attached to the idea of personal expression. Here, beauty conforms. Your brushstroke must follow your teacher's lineage. Your poem must reference nature, season, and longing, not emojis and existential dread. The bell tolls. A local temple marks the hour. You feel it vibrate through wooden panels. Time isn't just passing, it's circling. Days repeat with ritual exactness. You are one small part in a large, obedient puzzle. And you haven't even met the samurai yet. You're holding a wooden practice sword. Your back aches. Your knees are raw. And a hawk-eyed instructor is squinting at your stance, like you just insulted his ancestors. Welcome to life as a samurai in training. And let's be clear, you don't get to become a samurai just because you're brave. You're born into it. And once you're in, there's no escape except death, preferably the poetic kind. The Bushido Code rules your world now. It's more than loyalty and honor. It's emotional self-erasure. Feel insulted? Swallow it. Feel fear? Unacceptable. Feel joy? Suspicious. You must move through life with the serene deadpan of a calligraphy scroll. Laugh too loud, and someone might assume you lack self-control. Historians still debate whether this stoicism was truly widespread or idealized through later storytelling. But either way, emotional restraint was the samurai vibe. You're drilled in swordplay from childhood. Not just how to strike, but how to bow before you strike, how to clean the blade after, how to never draw it unnecessarily. Unsheathing a sword without using it? That's an insult to steel and intent. One quirky tidbit. Samurai sometimes named their swords as companions. Yours is still unnamed. It's just slightly resentful of your sloppy footwork. Social situations are warfare by subtler means. You speak using humble tones, even when you outrank someone. You walk behind your lord, not beside him. You never eat until your superior lifts his chopsticks. Even sneezing near nobility is considered a breach. Seriously, cover that nose or risk dishonor. You're sent to deliver a message, nothing dramatic, just a scroll with orders. But halfway there, a rival samurai calls out your clan's name with mockery. You must now weigh a paradox, respond and risk impoliteness, ignore it and risk cowardice. So you bow, quote a proverb about wind and leaves, and walk on. It's like passive-aggressive poetry with swords. The pressure's relentless.
Even dreaming of ambition can feel disloyal. You overhear rumors about a samurai who questioned his lord's orders politely. He now lives in disgrace, tending moss in exile. Moss. You want to achieve? Do it through service, humility, and silence. You attend a tea ceremony. Sounds lovely, right? Wrong. It's like Zen Olympics. You must kneel without shuffling. Your sleeves must not touch the tatami. The way you stir the tea isn't just method, it's metaphysical. The host quizzes you on aesthetics. You mumble something about impermanence and wabi-sabi. You pass. Barely. Then comes the darkest lesson. A fellow samurai fails a mission, not through betrayal, just bad luck. His lord disowns him. His response? Seppuku, ritual suicide by sword. And not quietly. The act is public, ceremonial, and somehow terrifyingly noble. You're told this is honor. You're told that if you ever falter, this is your destiny too. You start sleeping with one eye open and the other weeping metaphorically. One fringe tidbit. Some accounts suggest samurai might have been buried standing up to symbolically remain vigilant, though this is still debated. Creepy thought, though. Imagine a graveyard of upright warriors silently judging your posture. Your clothing gets heavier, not with weight, but symbolism. You wear two swords, a katana and a wakizaki. You tie them with careful knots, not too loose, not too boastful. You learn that sword etiquette is a language of rank and readiness. Unsheathed incorrectly, and you could insult an entire lineage. It's like handling dynamite with ballet gloves. And don't think religion brings relief. Zen Buddhism, adopted by many samurai, teaches detachment and meditation. You try meditating. Instead of peace, you get leg cramps and visions of disappointing your ancestors. One day, you're told your lord is testing loyalty. Everyone's summoned to perform synchronized archery. You miss once. No one speaks to you for a week. Even the cook won't meet your eyes. You wonder if dishonor is contagious. You realize Bushido isn't just a code, it's a straitjacket stitched with poetry. Your life is a performance with stakes so high, even blinking needs finesse. And outside this disciplined fortress, the world shifts. Merchants gain quiet power. Peasants plot silent resistance. The old order strains. But you're locked in honor's gilded cage, where failure means death, and success means another day of perfection. Tomorrow, the training continues.
You're not a samurai this time. You're born into the world of women in feudal Japan, where grace is power, but it's a power tightly leashed. You wake up early, not because you're busy, but because you're expected to be beautiful before dawn. Your hair must be combed with camellia oil. Your movements must be fluid. Your silence must speak volumes. You sit with your mother as she teaches you etiquette, not just how to pour tea, but how to do it with the exact wrist tilt that shows respect without self-assertion. The lesson isn't about hospitality, it's about invisibility. Historians still debate whether women had private influence behind closed doors or whether obedience was truly all-consuming. Either way, your path is pre-written. Marry well, speak softly, and never seem too smart. You're told not to laugh with your mouth open, not to run, not to look men in the eye for too long. Your clothes? Layers upon layers. The more formal the setting, the harder it is to walk. Ever try bowing at a 90-degree angle with a stiff obi crushing your ribs? It's feudal Pilates. And then there's the marriage market. You're paraded like calligraphy, judged for elegance, not character. Men with status want wives who resemble porcelain, not opinionated scrolls. You practice poetry, not for creativity, but to prove cultural refinement. Your favorite poem involves a plum blossom, the moon, and longing. Not love, longing. Because passionate romance, that's for folktales, not real life. You attend a gathering where men speak politics and warfare. You pour sake. You smile. You make no comment, even though you know more about battle maps than half the room. You've been reading secretly. The book is hidden inside a false drawer beneath your makeup box. One quirky detail, women sometimes used poetry exchanges as covert romantic communication. Your cousin even slipped a love haiku inside a folded fan once. Scandalous, yes. Also brilliant. You're told your virtue is everything. Not just chastity, but patience, serenity, and ability to endure boredom while seated on your knees for hours. Your brother, a samurai trainee, gets sword drills. You get kimono embroidery. Both involve sharp tools, but only one ends in glory. And if you're clever, be very careful. Ambition in women is treated like illness. Smile, bow, never outshine. Sometimes you dream of the Onobugisha, female warriors in history who defied the norms. You hear stories about Tomo Gozen, the legendary swordswoman who led troops with ferocity and grace. Historians still argue whether she was a mythological figure or a real battlefield commander. Either way, she's whispered about in hushed tones, not admired, cautiously remembered. You're not allowed in scholarly circles, but you listen. Your father speaks of Confucian ideals, filial piety, harmony, order. You apply them, but sometimes you twist them. You challenge your younger brother's rudeness by citing Confucius on respecting elders. Technically, you're right. Socially, you're pushing boundaries. You learn to walk with short steps, not out of modesty, but because long strides suggest dominance. Your slippers whisper against the polished wood. You don't clatter, you glide. Someone compliments your seasonal serenity. You're not sure what that means, but you bow anyway. At night, you write in a secret journal. Not about feelings, but about injustices. You tally moments when your voice was silenced. You do it neatly, in flawless calligraphy, because even rebellion must be graceful. And the worst part, you feel admiration for the rituals, for the beauty. You love the scent of cedar and the rustle of robes. You enjoy the tea ceremony, the slow rhythm of haiku. It's just that you want more than ornamental elegance. Your family arranges a meeting with a suitor. He speaks softly. He's polite. He quotes poetry. He also casually mentions that women should not read too much. It makes them melancholy. You smile. You recite a melancholy poem that's actually a cryptic burn. He doesn't notice. You feel triumphant and trapped, all at once. The walls are decorated with cranes and pine trees, symbols of longevity. You wonder, longevity for what? The customs? The silence? And yet you endure. You master the rules so deeply, you begin to subvert them. Quiet rebellion, artful resistance. Tomorrow, you smile again. You think food is comfort? Think again. In feudal Japan, even mealtime is a performance. You're seated on the tatami in a room so quiet you can hear the rice grains settle. There's no chatter, no clinking, no reaching over plates. You're not just eating, you're demonstrating your grasp of social harmony, visual aesthetics, and rank-based etiquette. You'll never look at a dinner party the same way again. Before you even touch your bowl, you're expected to bow to your host. Not a casual nod. This one's low, deliberate, and perfectly timed with the other guests. Arrive late? You've just insulted the entire clan. Historians still argue whether regional feasts had more relaxed customs, but in high-status circles, dinner was practically a ceremony. You're served rice, miso soup, pickled vegetables, and maybe grilled fish, each in lacquerware carefully chosen for the season. A crimson tray for autumn, pale green for spring. You're told that contrasting colors express awareness and sensitivity. Your job is to notice. And no, asking, "Why is this bowl so tiny?" is social suicide. The chopsticks are placed parallel, not skewed. You lift them with 2 hands, not 1. You never point them, never stab your food, never lick them. You want to flip your fish over to eat the underside? Stop right there. Turning it risks symbolizing a capsized boat. Bad luck, especially in coastal towns. The approved method? Slide the bones out gently. It's like surgery, but with soy sauce. You glance at your neighbor's bowl. Bigger portion. That's because he outranks you. Food quantity and plating aren't just culinary. They're indicators of status. There's an unspoken hierarchy on the table. Even the seating order mirrors social rank. You're at the edge? It's not a great sign. And then comes the bowing. Again. After the meal, before the tea. After the tea, before the departure. You spend more time politely folding yourself like origami than chewing. One fringe tidbit: some hosts used how guests bowed before tea as a metric for future alliances. Bow too shallow, and congratulations, you just missed a business opportunity without knowing it. As the meal winds down, your host offers sweets. You reach for one, but pause. Your hand might block someone else's view. You smile, adjust, and lightly grip the mochi like it's made of glass. You chew without sound. Someone sneezes. Everyone bows at once. You follow. Your clothes itch. Your legs tingle. You want to stretch, but etiquette forbids such indulgence. You sip the tea. It's bitter matcha, strong, frothy, and symbolic. You nod subtly to indicate gratitude. Verbal praise is excessive. Appreciation is a glance, a breath, a well-timed head tilt. Someone jokes about plum wine. You laugh, too loudly. 5 heads turn. You shrink. You think about the freedom of slurping noodles on the street. That's for merchants and peasants. Here, your laughter must never echo beyond the room. You realize this meal isn't nourishing your body. It's testing your survival skills. You dodge faux pas like ninja stars. Every movement matters. Even rising from the table must be done with minimal noise and maximum humility. Later, you learn that food offerings to ancestors were arranged with similar care. Meals weren't just sustenance. They were spiritual bridges, acts of devotion. Clean, symmetrical, seasonal. A poorly placed dish could offend the dead. You walk home hungry. Not for rice, for relief. You dream of messy meals, of eating with your hands, of forgetting which way your slippers point. But in feudal Japan, even hunger must bow first. Tomorrow brings another meal and another chance to fail gracefully.
You wake up and decide to blend in, because survival, apparently, depends on hair. In feudal Japan, your top knot isn't just a fashion statement. It's your identity, honor, and career resume rolled into one. The style, height, and placement of that knot could determine whether you're bowed to or beheaded. No pressure. You sit before a polished bronze mirror. A servant brings fragrant camellia oil and a comb carved from hardwood. You begin crafting a chonmage, a samurai's classic top knot, styled with a shaved crown to accommodate helmet comfort. It looks severe, purposeful, and vaguely aerodynamic. But mess it up, and someone might mistake you for a farmer, or worse, a merchant. And social mix-ups like that don't get you funny looks. They get you demotions, humiliation, or on spicy days, a duel. Historians still debate whether the top knot originated purely for practical armor reasons or was later infused with status symbolism. Either way, it's now a badge of fealty. You step outside and spot 3 different styles. One high and taut, signaling youthful service. One low and rounded, common among retired warriors. And one stiff and overly gelled, probably worn by someone trying way too hard. That guy, definitely overcompensating. You pass a group of artisans. Their hair, looser, tied back but without ceremony. You instantly know their class. No blade, no lord, no need to impress. One fringe tidbit, actors sometimes wore exaggerated top knots on stage to mock the elite. It didn't always go over well. Satirical hairstyles? Bold move. A young boy runs past, his head shaved with a remaining patch at the back, future samurai material. You nod subtly. Meanwhile, a peasant walks the road with no styled hair at all. His sunburned scalp shows his labor. You suddenly feel self-conscious. Your top knot says warrior, but your posture screams back pain. Then you meet a noble. His knot sits perfectly, ornamented with a subtle hairpin. You bow, and he glances at yours. Just a glance, but enough to analyze rank, precision, and social etiquette. You bow lower. It's not paranoia, it's protocol. Later, a girl passes. Her hair is long, glossy, and meticulously arranged. Women's hair in this era speaks volumes too. Loose and flowing for unmarried youth. Tied and tucked post-marriage. Braids with tiny charms? Her family's prosperous. You admire the beauty and realize even femininity here is calibrated. You hear rumors that rebels sometimes disguise themselves by altering their top knots. Some shaved their heads entirely, risking exile to hide in plain sight. Others copied merchant styles to pass unnoticed. Smart? Definitely. Risky? Absolutely. You wonder, what if your knot shifts in the wind? What if humidity ruins its crisp contour? Suddenly, you're not just grooming, you're calculating wind speed like an archer before a shot. Ancient hairstyling meets meteorology. At the market, someone mistakes your knot for a servant's. You correct them, gently but firmly. They bow. The social landscape is full of micro-adjustments, like hair-triggered diplomacy. Pun intended. You pass a shrine. A priest bows. His head is shaved completely, mark of spiritual renunciation. You realize that even hairstyle reflects internal philosophy. Warriors wear weight on their heads. Priests wear simplicity. Merchants wear ambition. Artisans wear craft. Later, you join a gathering. A senior samurai critiques a junior's knot, calling it too decorative. Translation: trying to look important. You quietly adjust yours. Half a finger's width tighter. You're safe. For now. And if you ever lose your status, your knot will change first. Not your clothes, not your home, your hair. It's the public declaration that says, I no longer belong. So tonight, as you lie down and undo your top knot, you cradle it gently, like an identity you might lose. Tomorrow, you'll twist it back up, neatly, strategically. Because in feudal Japan, even your follicles are governed by honor.
You're standing on the deck of a ship in the sun-drenched harbors of ancient Caria, and you're a woman. Which means, in theory, you should be nowhere near a warship, let alone commanding it. But history's got a twist tonight. And you're Artemisia. Yes, that Artemisia, the one who makes generals squirm and kings rethink their strategies. The wind tugs at your royal robes, but you wear armor beneath, just in case diplomacy fails. You gaze across a fleet flying Persian colors, and your orders echo with defiance. You're not just a queen, you're the admiral of these ships. Your troops know it, the enemy fears it, and your own allies? They squint, smile politely, and quietly question why a woman's in charge. In truth, you've walked this tightrope your whole life. Daughter of a Carian noble and part of the Persian world through alliance and obligation, you've mastered 2 cultures, multiple languages, and probably 4 different ways to politely insult someone with regal flair. You've had to earn loyalty where men are gifted it, outwit rivals who underestimate you, and rule your people while being scrutinized like a political anomaly. Historians still argue whether your naval skills were dramatized by chroniclers like Herodotus or truly surpassed those of contemporary commanders. But there's little debate about this. You changed the narrative of female leadership in the ancient world, and you did it by showing up where no one expected you, swinging harder than anyone else. You're preparing for battle at Salamis. The Persians have the numbers. The Greeks have geography. You look at the strait, tight, rocky, treacherous, and know exactly what's about to happen. Your instincts scream retreat. You tell Xerxes so, bluntly. He ignores you. Later, when chaos erupts, your ship maneuvers through the wreckage like a phantom. You make a ruthless call. Ram one of your own allied vessels to escape pursuit. It's brutal, strategic, effective. The Greek captain chasing you assumes you're defecting and backs off. You survive. Your fleet regroups, and your reputation? It skyrockets. One fringe tidbit? Some tales claim Xerxes remarked, "My men have become women, and my women men," after seeing your tactics. Compliment? Insult? Weird ancient gender metaphor? Scholars still aren't sure. Back in Caria, you're a ruler with teeth. You oversee fortifications, maritime trade, and internal politics. You play both diplomat and warlord, sipping wine at banquets where guests nervously wonder what you're really thinking. Spoiler, usually something sharp. You attend court in a palace that blends Greek elegance with Persian opulence. Marble floors, draped silks, bronze basins carved with sea serpents. You step lightly, but every servant knows your footsteps might announce generosity or storm. You keep them guessing. A rival lord tries to propose an alliance. You respond with historical references, layered metaphors, and one of those smiles that says, "I know what you want," and "no." Later, that lord stumbles into regional obscurity. You keep rising. One quirky detail: you allegedly commissioned tombs shaped like pyramids, mixing Greek tradition with Egyptian flair. You liked to stir the cultural soup, not for novelty, for power. Every gesture was political theater. You write letters in classical Greek. You negotiate in Persian. You judge in Carian law. You're not surviving a man's world. You're rewriting it. And though your legacy is tangled in myth and interpretation, one thing is clear: no one quite knew how to categorize you. Traitor, heroine, political chimera. You sip fig wine and watch the tide roll in. The world remembers kings and battles, but you're the unanticipated force, the queen who didn't blink, the admiral who didn't flinch. Tomorrow, the waves rise again.
The tent smells of sandalwood and fresh ink. Xerxes likes his court perfumed and orderly, even on the eve of war. You're standing among noble advisors, each murmuring embellished reports and overly cautious praise, but you're not here to flatter. You're Artemisia, queen of Caria and commander of warships, and your voice slices through courtly nonsense like a bronze dagger through silk. You clear your throat. You tell the king, your ally and superior, that attacking the Greeks in the narrow waters of Salamis is a tactical disaster. You explain it plainly, with diagrams if necessary. You don't sugarcoat, and that makes everyone uncomfortable. Historians still debate whether Xerxes respected your boldness or merely tolerated it. But his expression? It twitches, not in anger, but in what looks suspiciously like admiration. Because while other commanders worry about impressing royalty, you're the one whispering inconvenient truths. The court scribes pause mid-scroll. You're not being polite, you're being strategic. The Greek navy is smaller, but the terrain favors them. You're willing to lose pride to preserve lives. Xerxes nods, and then he ignores your advice. Because he's king, and kings sometimes prefer ambition over caution. Later, battle erupts. You're on deck again, this time not as critic, but as storm. Your ship threads chaos like a needle through fabric. Fire, splintered hulls, screaming men. This is where your clarity sharpens. You see a Greek ship barreling toward you. No escape, no time. So you do something unforgettable.
You ram one of your own allied vessels, fooling your pursuers. They think you've defected. They peel away. You survive. It's cunning, ruthless, brilliant. Some allies call it betrayal. Others call it genius. One quirky footnote. It's said that after the battle, Xerxes awarded you an extra suit of armor made of purple and gold, though that might be legend. Still, nice imagery. You return to court with more ships intact than most commanders. Xerxes praises you. The murmuring advisors stop murmuring. You bow, not low, not meekly, just enough to remind everyone you were right. You retire to Caria, but not quietly. You continue ruling, advising, navigating diplomacy. You plant cultural seeds, Greek letters on Persian documents, Carian rites beneath Persian temples. You're the queen of layered symbols. In private, you write. You compose strategies, notes on ship designs, reflections on politics. You're not just a war hero, you're a thinker. Historians still debate whether these writings survived or were absorbed into broader Persian archives, but the legend of your intellect lives on. You host a gathering, merchants, lords, envoys. One drunken emissary makes a dismissive comment about female fortune. You smile. You offer him wine, strong, uncut. He passes out before dessert. Nobody interrupts your table again. You wear robes stitched with embroidered octopuses, 8 arms, infinite reach. A metaphor? Of course. Everything you do is a metaphor. You walk through Caria's port at dusk, the sails glowing orange against the horizon. Your people nod respectfully, some smiling. You're not just respected, you're remembered. Not quietly, not just as an anomaly, as force. Tomorrow, someone else will tell your story. Probably a man, maybe wrong. Doesn't matter. You already wrote it with waves and war.
You step barefoot into a Mayan observatory. Yes, barefoot. Not out of reverence, but practicality. These ancient astronomers believed connection with the earth grounded the soul during celestial study. Above you, a narrow slit in the stone ceiling reveals a swath of stars so precise it might as well be laser-guided. And remember, there's no telescope, just eyes, angles, and cosmic obsession. You're part of a world that spans continents and centuries, where civilizations across Asia, the Middle East, Mesoamerica, and beyond used the naked eye to track the universe. You think astrology apps are handy. These folks built multi-ton temples that acted like sundials on steroids. You stand at the heart of one, realizing that every stone angle and shadow path is a calculation. The solstice? Marked. The equinox? Celebrated. Your shoes? Still missing. To your left, a priest chants to Venus. To your right, a scribe notes Jupiter's arc with a stick and string. You're suddenly aware that ancient astronomy wasn't passive, it was participatory. You're not looking at stars,
You're interpreting divine will. One fringe belief: Mayan astronomers sometimes linked eclipses with jaguar spirits devouring the sun. Spooky sky cats, anyone? Historians still argue whether every celestial prediction was driven by math or myth, likely both. You join a Babylonian scholar. Well, technically you're crouched behind a clay tablet, eavesdropping as he calculates lunar phases with base 60 math. You scribble notes. You don't understand the symbols, but they look official. He mutters about Saros cycles. You nod like you know what that means. In Egypt, you watch as temple walls align perfectly with rising stars during festivals. You're offered honey cakes shaped like constellations, delicious and educational. You learn that astronomy governed harvests, rituals, coronations. Pharaohs weren't just divine by birth, they were timed to the heavens like seasonal Netflix releases. One quirky moment: you stumble upon a Sumerian ritual where celestial omens are interpreted based on sheep entrails. Yes, space prophecy via livestock anatomy. You blink. They're serious. You step back slowly. At night, in ancient India, you listen to recitations of planetary movements called graha. These rhythms aren't just technical, they're woven into music, calendars, and medicine. A monk explains that Mars affects blood flow. You cough and wonder if that's related. In China, you visit a Tang dynasty court where star charts hang beside royal decrees. The emperor decides major policies based on planetary harmony. Mercury retrograde, civil war postponed. Historians still debate whether this was political theater or true belief. Either way, your job just got celestial. You climb a stone tower in Central America. The view? Breathtaking. The horizon matches the arc of Venus. Below, dancers mimic planetary cycles with intricate choreography. You join in and immediately trip over someone's ceremonial feathers. Embarrassing, but educational. One astronomer shows you a bowl with holes punched around its rim. Each marks a different moon phase. It's like a cereal box calendar with lunar data. You sip fermented maize drink and pretend you understand trigonometry. Spoiler, you don't. By dawn, you've wandered through temples, tents, and towers. You've seen equations etched into stone and myths spun into music. You're not just stargazing, you're decoding time itself. And tomorrow, the moon moves, and so do you.
You stand in the heart of a stone temple, one that feels less like architecture and more like a massive sundial having an existential crisis. The air is thick with incense, footsteps echo like whispers, and shafts of sunlight cut through angled openings carved with terrifying precision. This isn't just a building, it's a celestial instrument, and you're about to realize that ancient astronomy didn't just live in scrolls, it lived in stone. You trace a line etched into the floor. It doesn't lead to a door, it leads to sunrise. These people didn't build for comfort, they built to mark time. Every corridor, courtyard, and column sings a planetary rhythm. Historians still debate whether these architectural alignments were consciously engineered or discovered through spiritual intuition, but the outcomes? Uncanny. The Great Pyramids of Egypt, aligned with Orion's belt. The Mayan city of Chichen Itza,
built so that, during the equinox, shadows create a serpent slithering down the temple stairs. That's not spooky, it's stellar choreography. You stand at the base of the Temple of Kukulkan and suddenly regret laughing at those astrology memes. One fringe tidbit: some believe Angkor Wat in Cambodia doubles as a 3D star map. You squint at the layout, pretend you're holding a celestial compass, and decide that, yes, this place probably also doubles as a cosmic jukebox. In ancient Greece, you enter the Tower of the Winds, an octagonal marble wonder in Athens. Each face matches a cardinal direction, featuring carved gods representing various winds. It's a weather station, masquerading as sculpture. You spot markings on the floor, likely used to track solar declinations. Someone hands you a goblet. You're not sure if it's celebratory or instructional. You sip. It's wine. You're fine. At Stonehenge, you don't just gaze at rocks. You watch shadows stretch and shrink with clock-like precision. Someone hands you a bone whistle. It's for timing rituals. You ask how it works. They shrug. You blow when the sun hits the right stone. Makes sense. Chinese observatories used bronze armillary spheres, spinning, spiked orbs mimicking celestial movement. You try turning one. It creaks like wisdom. An old astronomer smiles at you and murmurs, "Stars don't rush." You feel profoundly judged, but also enlightened. Back in Mesoamerica, you're shown temple steps designed to reflect lunar cycles. Each step represents a phase. You miscount and accidentally declare a new moon during a waxing crescent. No one corrects you. You bow in shame. Ancient Indians built observatories like Jantar Mantar, gigantic geometric sculptures whose shadows told time to the minute. You wander into one shaped like a staircase and feel like you've entered a sundial-themed escape room. One quirky discovery: you stumble across a Roman villa where tiles sparkle differently depending on the position of the sun. Decorative? Sure, but also functional. Traders used it to gauge midday for pricing grain. Your sundial app feels suddenly inadequate. By now, you've seen celestial alignment carved into brick, baked into stone, and polished into bronze. These weren't decorative flourishes. They were observatories without telescopes, calculators without batteries, calendars without dates. As twilight descends, you sit on a temple's threshold. The stars flicker into view. You realize buildings once told time louder than bells. Their silence was symphonic. And tomorrow, the stones shift with the sun again.
You look up at the night sky, searching not just for stars, but for meaning and names. The constellations don't whisper in Latin this time. They chant in Sanskrit. They sing in Greek. They rumble in Chinese. You're in the global classroom of the ancient cosmos, and the ceiling above you is crowded with gods, beasts, philosophers, and questions that still echo. You're handed a scroll that maps out Ursa Major, but the figure isn't a bear tonight. It's a chariot, or a 7-stage ladder to enlightenment. Depends on who's guiding the discussion. You blink. You listen. You try to keep up. In India, scholars recite verses from the Vedanga Jyotisha, timing rituals and agricultural cycles based on planetary positions. The grahas, or planetary bodies, are not distant rocks. They're embodiments of forces. Mars, the warrior. Jupiter, the teacher. You're told your destiny lives in your birth chart. You joke about being a Taurus.
The priest does not laugh. One fringe idea floats by. Some ancient texts suggest eclipses aren't just cosmic events, they're demons swallowing the sun and moon. Specifically, Rahu and Ketu, the celestial troublemakers. Their myth involves decapitation and revenge. You pretend not to be alarmed, but let's be honest, demonic lunar snacks are hard to unhear. You travel to ancient Greece. There you find Ptolemy scribbling theories about geocentrism, the idea that everything revolves around Earth. Makes sense if your ego's big enough. Still, you watch him draw orbits so complex they need extra circles called epicycles. You nod, you blink. You suspect someone's overcompensating. Historians still argue whether these models were sincere efforts to describe reality or clever fudges to fit religious worldviews. Probably both. Science and belief were roommates back then. Sometimes friends, sometimes frenemies. You sit under a fig tree while a Greek philosopher explains that constellations influence character. You ask, even drama? He replies, especially drama. You feel seen. In China, the sky is divided into 28 lunar mansions. Not mansions like luxury real estate, more like cosmic districts. Each governs certain omens, rituals, and even matchmaking. You're introduced to one linked with tigers and revenge. You wonder if it matches your mood. Possibly. You're handed a copper astrolabe in Baghdad. It's engraved so delicately it looks like jewelry, but it calculates celestial time, prayer hours, and star altitudes. You try to use it. You accidentally predict sunrise in the wrong continent. It's fine. Nobody noticed. You learn that naming stars isn't just classification, it's storytelling. Arabic names like Betelgeuse, Aldebaran, and Vega still echo through modern astronomy. Meanwhile, your tour guide explains the tale of the seven sisters, Pleiades, who fled Orion's advances and now sparkle from a safe celestial distance. Ancient harassment policy? Stars set the precedent. One quirky account. In Polynesian navigation, constellations weren't just stories, they were GPS. You watch as sailors steer by star paths, memorized like lullabies. They don't glance at instruments, they feel the sky. You try to copy them, you bump into a canoe. As dawn breaks, you realize that naming constellations wasn't just ancient science. It was therapy, politics, romance, and warning. Constellations didn't just reflect the heavens, they revealed humanity, its fears, its hopes, its need to make sense of the vast cold dark. And tomorrow, Orion rises again, with more stories in tow.
You're seated in a candle-lit study, parchment spread before you, ink staining your fingertips. And the year is 1803. You're Thomas Jefferson, sort of, or maybe just someone channeling his worry-wrinkled thoughts. The question weighing down the room like humidity in July: should the United States double in size? And how badly could that backfire? France has offered you a deal.
Not a houseboat, not a rare book collection. Louisiana. All of it. Vast, mysterious, river-woven, and lightly labeled on maps as kind of known. Napoleon's agents want cash. You want land. But the Constitution? It's silent on buying continents. You chew your quill. This could be monumental or monumentally dumb. Historians still argue whether Jefferson truly believed the purchase was constitutional or simply gambled on long-term payoff. Either way, you're drafting letters faster than interns write emails. You know expansion means opportunity, farms, ports, influence. You also know it means complications. Indigenous nations, Spanish borders, slavery debates. This isn't monopoly. This is chess with land deeds. You stroll past maps with rivers winding like thoughts. The Mississippi looms large. Commerce, control, connection. You imagine farmers sending goods downstream. Cities rising like yeast. You imagine conflict. Ownership means consequences. You approve the deal. $15 million. That's about 4 cents an acre. A bargain, if you ignore the fact that millions already live there. You don't consult them. You're busy building destiny. One quirky tidbit, the original negotiations weren't even about the full territory. The U.S. just wanted New Orleans. France countered by saying, "How about everything west of the Mississippi?" You blinked, then said yes. You write to Congress, calling the deal peaceful and practical. Some senators cheer. Others frown, muttering about executive overreach. One calls it imperial ambition with powdered sugar on top. You send more letters. You throw in words like agrarian vision and yeoman virtue. It helps. Outside the White House, people toast, sing, debate. Merchants predict prosperity. Land speculators twitch with excitement. Enslaved people remain silent, knowing that more land might mean more chains. Historians still debate whether the Louisiana Purchase was an act of genius or a blueprint for displacement. Probably both. You sip tea, stare at your globe, and think about borders drawn in ink, erased in blood. And tomorrow, Lewis and Clark head west with pens, guns, and mixed motives.
You step into the thick humidity of Saint-Domingue, the crown jewel of French colonial ambition in the Caribbean. Sugar fields stretch beyond sight, each stalk a whisper of blood and revolution. You're not the planter, nor the governor. You're watching history detonate from the shadows. Because in 1803, Haiti doesn't just rise, it roars. And that roar will shake empires. The plantation creaks with enforced order. Enslaved Africans work under brutal heat, bones sore, spirits gasping. But beneath that silence is something hot and volcanic. You overhear coded songs in the cane fields, fragmented chants in Creole. It's resistance disguised as rhythm. Then everything ignites. You stand beside Toussaint Louverture, a former slave turned strategist, whose mind dances between French political nuance and African spiritual fervor. He negotiates with colonial powers, writes proclamations with chilling calm, and prepares armies with surgical efficiency. You watch him defy France, Spain, and Britain, sometimes all three in the same week. Historians still argue whether Louverture sought independence or autonomy within France. But one thing's clear: his rebellion doesn't play by imperial rules. It's guerrilla warfare tangled with diplomacy, dignity coated in sword steel. The rebellion spreads. Flames lick plantation rooftops. French generals stagger. Napoleon fumes from across the ocean. You hear reports of victories in mountain passes, of women fighting alongside men, of slaves who once picked sugar, now wielding rifles wrapped in cloth. You realize Haiti isn't simply resisting, it's redefining sovereignty. One fringe tidbit: some rebel leaders carried charms made from animal bones and herbs, claiming they could deflect bullets. Whether magic or morale, it worked. You watch soldiers march into skirmishes infused with spiritual armor. Back in France, Napoleon's empire begins to wobble. European wars stretch his forces thin. Saint-Domingue becomes expensive, dangerous, unmanageable. You hear a minister whisper, "Sell Louisiana." You raise an eyebrow. What? Yep, because France can't keep Haiti, it doesn't need its buffer territories either. So the Louisiana Purchase isn't just a business deal, it's fallout from Haitian victory. Jefferson writes letters. French diplomats pack ink and regrets. You stand on the edge of this geopolitical domino chain and realize something mind-blowing. A revolution led by enslaved people just triggered the largest land sale in U.S. history. You wander Port-au-Prince. Debris smolders, but pride rises. Freed citizens walk with defiant posture. Music returns to the streets. Merchants trade with new purpose. Flags change. So does fate. Yet the world isn't cheering. European newspapers label Haiti a rogue state. Colonists predict chaos. The U.S. holds its breath, grateful for land, fearful for liberation contagion. You realize freedom here threatens comfort elsewhere. Historians still debate why the Haitian Revolution remains sidelined in many curricula. Maybe it's the complexity. Maybe it's the discomfort. But you know this: it's seismic. Not just for Haiti, but for everyone playing empire in 1803. You climb a hill overlooking the bay. Ships fade into distance, some bringing trade, some escaping truth. Haiti breathes, broken but bold. And tomorrow, new maps will be drawn, not in Paris, but from the ashes of Saint-Domingue.
You're bouncing uncomfortably in a wooden canoe, squinting at mosquitoes the size of applause, and wondering whether mapping an entire continent counts as a vacation. You're with Lewis and Clark, official explorers now. But let's not pretend this is just adventure. You're on borrowed land, wrapped in diplomatic pretense, quietly jotting down everything that could help a young United States expand its reach.
The Louisiana Purchase was inked, sealed, and congratulated, but nobody actually knew what it contained. You're told it's vast, wild, untapped. What they don't say is it's already lived in. Tribes stretch across plains and forests with cultures older than the Constitution. But hey, your job isn't to ask permission. It's to chart the new American dream. You navigate upstream through the Missouri River. Your feet are numb, your journals soggy. Sacagawea, yes, that Sacagawea, walks beside you with grace that borders on miraculous. She translates, mediates, heals, and occasionally prevents total disaster. You're not just indebted, you're humbled. Historians still debate how much agency she had in shaping the journey's diplomacy, but her presence, essential. You sketch terrain, each bluff, bend, and bison. Your maps are more than drawings, they're destiny blueprints. You meet tribes, some curious, some cautious. You offer trinkets, medals, promises. The U.S. doesn't declare ownership just yet. It suggests it with speeches. You feel the tension like static in your teeth. One fringe tidbit. During the journey, Lewis's slave, York, became something of a celebrity among native tribes, who were astonished by his stature and skin tone. York danced, traded, negotiated. Jefferson never knew what to make of that. You silently cheer for him. You spot endless buffalo herds, prairie seas, mountains like myth. You write poems to no one, but your notes will later justify expansion, settlement, and eventually displacement. You camp under stars. The sky above is quiet, but the land isn't. You hear distant drums, horse hooves, prayers whispered to rivers. Every footprint you leave erases a dozen that were already there. You cross paths with French trappers. They talk fur and profit. You talk enlightenment and exploration. Nobody says colonial creep, but everyone smells it in the air. Historians still debate whether Lewis and Clark's journey was noble discovery or soft invasion, but your journal doesn't lie. You record beauty and tension, generosity and theft. Later, people will name schools after these men. Statues will rise. But you, on this muddy trail, see the layers. Not conquest, collision. And tomorrow, you'll cross another river mapped by those who never asked to be charted. You're seated in a marble-floored chamber, echoing with argument, candle smoke, and papers rustling like restless ghosts. Congress is in session, and tonight, the Louisiana Purchase isn't just land, it's a moral blender set to high speed. You listen as senators spar over sovereignty, slavery, and the shockwave this expansion sends through every political compass. The central dilemma? This new territory isn't empty. It's home to dozens of native nations. But the Purchase doesn't mention them. You raise your hand, trying to ask, who did we actually buy this land from? The clerk glares. The answer, of course, is France. But France didn't live there. It just sold the deed. You blink. The silence is deafening. One senator waxes poetic about manifest destiny, a phrase not yet coined, but already slinking through the room like destiny's long shadow. "We must spread liberty," he declares, "westward." Another stands, voice sharp, "At whose expense?" You watch as maps become battlegrounds and property becomes prophecy. Historians still debate whether legislators truly grasped the enormity of indigenous displacement this purchase would cause. Some did, others ignored it with alarming grace. You hear phrases like Indian removal tossed about casually, like reorganizing a bookshelf instead of lives. Then comes the slavery question. New land means new decisions. Will slavery expand with the territory? Southern lawmakers nod. Northern ones squirm. Jefferson hoped this deal would empower an agrarian republic. Others see opportunity for cotton, for chains, for profit. You overhear one representative comparing enslaved labor to economic necessity. Another refutes it's a moral stain. The room doesn't settle. It simmers. And you, watching from the corner, sense a fracture forming. One quirky moment. Someone tries to delay the debate by reading aloud from a pamphlet about prairie grass. Nobody laughs. Outside, activists petition. Indigenous delegations wait, often indefinitely. And newspapers print dueling headlines. Some hail expansion as divine favor. Others call it theft with legal stationery. You visit a meeting among native leaders. Their messages? Clear, resolute, anguished. They did not consent. Their cultures, languages, sovereignty, none were on the negotiation table. You feel the weight of voices erased, edited, footnoted. The legal scholars jump in next. Can the federal government even make this purchase? Does the Constitution allow it? Jefferson himself tiptoes around the issue, invoking treaties and implied powers. You see eyebrows raised so high they reached political stratosphere. Historians still argue whether this act birthed the imperial presidency. One stroke and millions of acres changed hands. You jot notes. You sketch contradictions. In a back room, aides trade whispers about future territories, Texas, Oregon, California. You realize Louisiana is just the start. The land debate isn't closing, it's multiplying. You walk down the hall, past busts of founding fathers who never imagined this scale of westward hunger. And you understand, this purchase is less about geography than ideology. It's a national identity crisis, dressed in cartography. And tomorrow, the frontier pushes outward, taking everything with it. You stand on a windswept plateau, boots scuffed with prairie dust, and eyes scanning a horizon that stretches forever. This is the aftermath of the Louisiana Purchase, an empire born in silence and solidified in movement. You don't hear fanfare. You hear wagons groaning, treaties breaking, and the unmistakable sound of history splitting its seams. You're watching settlers push west, not like adventurers, but like inevitability. Every new homestead redraws the land's meaning. Forests become farms,
Rivers become property lines. Sacred grounds become surveyor jokes. You wince. The U.S. government sends agents, documents, and soldiers. Tribes receive promises, trade goods, and eventual betrayal. You sit in on negotiations. One elder asks, "Will your people remember us?" The translator hesitates. You bite your lip. Historians still debate whether this expansion was patriotic destiny or orchestrated erasure. It's probably both. You read land grants that ignore native claims. You hear children taught about taming the wilderness. You realize nobody asked if wilderness wanted taming. Plantations rise. Cotton spreads. So does slavery. Southern states see fertile soil and opportunity. Northern states wrangle with conscience. You attend a Senate meeting where someone says, "Let the land decide." The land doesn't speak. People speak for it. You follow a caravan west. Wagons creak. Children stare. One woman hums a tune about morning light. Hope glimmers amid contradiction. You wonder if optimism and oblivion are cousins. One quirky moment. A settler finds dinosaur bones while digging for potatoes. Locals call them thunder lizards. Nobody has a formal name yet, but America's prehistoric truths are leaking through new foundations. You arrive at a town barely sketched into maps. The buildings lean, the citizens dream. You see libraries and saloons sharing walls. One man says, "This land is opportunity." His neighbor replies, "This land is theft." They both sip whiskey. You read a poem etched into barnwood. Westward we march, with tools and tales, planting our dreams, erasing trails. You stare at it for a while. Historians still wrestle with this legacy. Was the Louisiana Purchase a triumph of vision or tragedy of silence? You know it's not clean. You know it's not done. You whisper a question to the wind. What was the cost? The wind answers by rustling through abandoned treaty stones. And as twilight falls over the wide plains, you sit on a rock warmed by sun, cooled by history. The air softens. The buzz of expansion fades into a hush. You lie back on a grassy knoll, looking up at a sky just as mysterious as the ones ancient stargazers charted, just as vast as the dreams that sailed west with Lewis and Clark. Stars blink slowly into view, steady and old, outliving all borders and debates. Your breath slows. The weight of caste systems, codes of honor, revolutions, explorations, all of it feels lighter now. Like worn clothes draped over the edges of sleep. The rhythms of history begin to lull. The swirl of battleships commanded by queens, the echoes of chants in stone temples aligned to constellations. The hush between legislative arguments in dim-lit chambers. Everything we touched tonight was heavy, but also strangely beautiful. You let the contradictions settle. The grace and cruelty of feudal Japan, the wisdom and violence of ancient astronomers, the noble dreams and tragic omissions of expansion. In those contradictions there's truth, and in truth there's rest.
the final breeze lifts a single note of distant music. Maybe it's a court song from ancient Caria, or a lullaby from the cane fields of Haiti. Doesn't matter, it's yours now. You let it carry you. Sleep comes not as an escape, but as a continuation. Let it thread through time like moonlight across maps. Soft, silver, forgiving.